Hello, hello. Fancy seeing me here. This video is going to be a really interesting one because I don't know how many people are going to care about it, but I'm going to film it anyway because that's sort of the motto of my channel. And I have kind of spoken about this before in a video which I will link up here. Many years ago, before I left Holland, I was part of a TV show in Holland, and in it we had to interview various famous guests. The name of the TV show was Praatjesmakers in Dutch, and I think I was hired to film 7, but it only aired 6. And one of the more popular groups or people that I interviewed was K3. In fact, purely by chance, I actually have a pencil case right here with their faces on it. These 3. I was obsessed as a child with this group. Basically, it was a Dutch pop group that I think started out in 1998, I want to guess. And it was 3 Belgian singers, actually. One had blonde hair, one had red hair, and one had black hair. And it was very much designed for kids, young kids. And I grew up listening to their songs over and over and over and over and over again. And then after around, I want to say 10 years, maybe 12 years, I can't remember exactly at what point it happened, the blonde one tapped out. And that was all really emotional, and I remember crying a lot. And then they had a TV show called K2 zoekt K3, where they were looking for a new person to fill in sort of that third character. And I remember watching that religiously. And I remember thinking, like, if they do that ever again when I'm a bit older, I want to be on that show. I want to have a go at that. Spoiler alert, it never happened. But then they got this new person in called Josje, and I quite quickly grew to like her. And she kind of just went right in with the group, and they continued making music, and it was fantastic. When I was hired to do this sort of TV show job, they told me I'd be interviewing famous celebrities. Is there anyone I'd really like to interview? And they made it very clear that it probably wasn't going to happen, but that they would do their best, which was very nice of them. And I told them, look, I'm a big fan of K3. I actually don't think I said it, I think it was all through my parents, but we definitely let them know that that would be kind of the dream for me because I was a massive fan. Like, to the extent where me and 2 friends would spend our, like, what's it called, like breaks in school, like, I can only think of the Dutch word, like when you have lunchtime break or recess, performing songs and doing a full-on show, like in the... I'm blanking on all the English words when I'm talking about something Dutch, apparently. Like the place where you hang out for lunch. I don't know. Outside, playground, whatever. Like, we would do so many performances. We'd go through all their songs. We'd choreograph it kind of ourselves, but then also sometimes take their choreography. We were obsessed, and I think I was the most obsessed, but I could be wrong. I definitely held on to the obsession for the longest, and I do sometimes still listen to their music. Anyway, cut to, I had already done a couple of filming sessions. I think I'd done 2 or 3. I could be mistaken. And I get home from school one day and my father puts on the voicemail from like the phone, and I'm in the kitchen with him listening, and someone mentioned something about potentially interviewing someone exciting. I don't think they said at the time that it was K3, but I definitely remember thinking it was. And at the end of the voicemail, they were like, please call us back. So my father did. And then he passed the phone to me and they said, you're going to be interviewing K3. And I remember, I don't know if I cried, but I was definitely unbelievably excited. I could not believe it. And very quickly my parents were like, you need to get your hopes down because it might not happen. They've asked them, something might happen and they might not be able to, or we might have like accidentally got a parody group. Like, you just cannot get your hopes up. And more importantly than that, don't tell anyone. Now, I think on the whole, they didn't really mind me telling sort of my friends, because I do have a vague memory of telling them about some of the other people I interviewed. But I guess those weren't as big of a deal for us, like at our age, as in they weren't really people that my friend group would necessarily care that much about. But K3 was like huge. So they were like, we are not telling anyone until after the interview. And that was hard. And I remember, I think the interview was on a Wednesday. I could be mistaken, but that's what I remember. And it was in Belgium, or maybe it was in the south of Holland. But either way, we lived in the north. So they drove me, and I think I was on my own. I don't think my parents came, but I was at school on Wednesday. And I remember just being so like, I don't know what the right word is, but so excited, but also like having to shut my mouth and being so desperate to tell someone. Actually, maybe it was a Tuesday and I told them on the Wednesday. Either way, I just couldn't contain myself, but I did. Because I knew I had to, but I definitely didn't try to not get my hopes up. Anyway, cut to me getting there. And we go through the script and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, do you have any questions you want to ask? And then I was in a different room. And basically how it always worked was the people I interviewed went into one room first, and then I would kind of join them after. And I was never really nervous interviewing any of the other guests. I was always fine. I was like come. And I think it was because I didn't really know any of the others. But I remember, even just thinking about it, I remember how unbelievably nervous I was when I saw them actually walk through the door. I was like, that is them. I was shaking so hard. And I remember seeing them walk in and A, being desperate to run in that room and just like give them a hug, and then B, not wanting to go in there at all and just being terrified. But then once they all sat down and things, it felt like an eternity because they had to make sure they were mic'd up and everything and the cameras were ready. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Sorry, I just spilled my tea again. And then they were like, right, you need to go in. And I was like, oh my God, shaking so much. And you could hear it in my voice as well. Now, I have found some TikToks. I don't know if they're still floating around, but I know that they were. So I'll link them down below if they still are. And yeah, I was just so terrified. Anyway, I interviewed them for about an hour. And then at the end, I told them like, because the questions you're meant to ask, basically the whole premise of it is that it's kind of rude questions that a kid wouldn't usually ask. But then at the end you reveal like sort of that you pranked them or whatever. And usually like it's just a bit of a laugh and whatever. But at the end of this one, and I think it is actually in the clip, or at least it was in what was aired, I think. I tell them that I'm, you know, these aren't my questions. And then I kind of go, but I am a really big fan. And they were like, yeah, sure. And I was like, no, I promise I am. Please, can I have your signatures? And they were so lovely. They were so sweet. And I got to take photos with them and everything. Oh, my heart is still racing, like just thinking about the whole experience. And then obviously after I told my friends, and then a few weeks, months later, it was uploaded or whatever it's called, shown on the television. And I just remember all the feelings. Yeah, I simply couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. And the one thing I do really regret is that once the whole thing was finished and everything was wrapped, like all of the interviews, they said, look, we're gonna give you a DVD that's got all the interviews on it and also all the pictures that we took over the time. But what we knew was that basically I always interviewed them for like an hour and a half, but they only ever showcased like maybe 2 or 3 minutes on TV. Like they really cut a lot. And we knew that, and that was fine. And they said that that's what they were going to give us on the DVD, and we're like, yeah, that's fine. But we did ask if there was any chance that I could get the full footage of the one with Kadri, like totally uncut. And they said they would do their best. And then it never happened. So there's like an hour's worth of footage of me talking to Kadri that has never been shown anywhere and that I don't even have. And I do wish I had that. But aside from that, it was so cool. Also, just to go right back to the start when I was saying about Kadri zoekt Kadri, I'm gonna say quite recently, but it probably wasn't. All 3 of them decided to finally, you know, say, right, we're done. But they didn't want to just stop Kadri altogether, so they kind of did the same program as what they'd done when they were trying to find the new 1 person, but to find the new 3 people. And I think I was aware of it at the time, but I was just a bit too young. Like just a little bit. I think, I could be mistaken. Maybe I only found out about it too late. But I started watching them because they were uploaded onto YouTube. I'm still only in like the 3rd episode or something. I really do need to finish watching it. But even just watching the first few episodes, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd known about it. I wish I could have done it. And then I also think since then there's been another Kadri zoekt Kadri, and I'm like, I just need to be more on top of this. Because I think I've still got a few more years where I could maybe apply. And I do think it's something I'd want to do. Like, it's definitely a big commitment, but I'd be excited to at least try it. I don't know. That's not a problem for today anyway. Or maybe it is by the time you're watching this, but yeah, this is just a very, very long video to explain sort of everything that happened in and around interviewing Kadri. It was a very, very exciting and nerve-wracking day, and it was just so cool. I could not believe it. But yeah, that's all for today's video, and I will see you hopefully soonish. Also, just before I go, I don't want it to come across like I'm making this video to be like, well, I'm better than everyone. Really not. I just wanted to share my experience of that day because I was thinking about it recently for some reason, and I was like, I want to remember that, you know? But I'm really not trying to come across as like, well, I got to interview Kadri. Not that it means anything for most of you, but anyway, that's my story for today, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!